Creating an installer for a C# desktop application used to involve a third-party solution like InstallShield to create MSI or setup files. With the addition of UWP or Universal Windows projects, Microsoft created the MSIX installer option. However, until recently, it only worked for UWP applications. Now, we can use the MSIX installer to install Winforms and WPF desktop applications, and we don't even have to go through the Microsoft Store if we don't want to. In this video, we're going to look at how to create those MSIX setup packages, how to include our project in the package, and how to install and update our application on the client machine. Now, if you've never watched a video of mine before, my name is Tim Corey, and it's my goal to make learning C# easier. One of the ways I do that is by teaching context. You'll find a lot of tutorials out there that will teach you what to do. I go a few steps beyond that to show you when to do it, why you should or should not do it, what pitfalls to avoid, and what the best practices are. Basically, I get you ready for the real world. If that's the type of training you're interested in, subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when I release new videos. Finally, in the description, there are links to get the source code for this video, to sign up for my mailing list, to join Patreon, and to get access to all my courses, as well as any links I mentioned in today's video. If you're looking to make a career out of C# or want to be better in your C# career, my content can launch you forward faster. Check out all I have to offer at IAmTimCorey.com or sign up for my mailing list to hear from me directly. Okay, let's go over to Visual Studio. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to create a brand new project. I'm going to create a WPF application. It's a .NET Core WPF application. And I'm going to call this my WPF demo app. And this is going to be my installer demo project. Or installer demo. Let's call it that. Because it's not a project, it's a solution. So this is my installer demo solution. And inside there I'll have a WPF demo application. Now, this is not a WPF demonstration. It's not about making a WPF app. I've got a whole playlist on WPF if you want to start using it. But what we're going to do is we're going to just create something that is obvious what's going on. So I'm going to put on here a label or a text block. So text block, and we're going to say that this is going to say, I don't know, this is our first version. All right, notice in the upper left-hand corner, there's our first version. And we're going to make this bigger, so font size is much bigger. Let's go with, let's go with 38, like so. And then let's get some padding. What's a margin? Margin, we'll give it margin of 20, like so. There's our application. Really not about the application, okay? This is a somewhat horrible looking application, but it gives us something to work with. Okay, so if we were to run this right now, it's just going to have just this. That's all it's going to be, but I will demonstrate how it looks. So you can see, this is our first version. It says main window up here, a little icon, kind of ugly, but again, it works. All right, so now we're going to create an installer for this really amazing application. So I'm going to right click on my solution. I'm going to say add new project. And what I'm looking for is, let's look for the Windows Application Packaging project. So Windows Application Packaging project. And there we go. There's our Windows Application Packaging project. If you don't have that in this list, first of all, make sure that you clear out all these filters and then try again. Because maybe you're filtering on a different language or on a different platform. For example, WPF, this would not show up because it says only UWP in Windows. It doesn't say WPF, even though it can do WPF. All right, so make sure you clear your filters out and try again. If you still don't find it, then you probably don't have the UWP options installed in Visual Studio. So you go to the Tools menu up here, and the very first option is Get Options and Features, I believe it's called. Click that, and it's going to create an installer page going to pop up. It's going to take a little bit. It'll probably give you a prompt saying, hey, do you want to allow this elevated permission thing? And you say yes, and then it's going to give you the setup page for configuring Visual Studio. Just make sure you have the UWP or the Universal Windows Platform project option selected, and then that should install this MSIX installer for you. Okay, that's this template. So now I have this template, Windows Application Packaging Project. I hit Next. I need to give a name. So this is going to be our this is our packaging project. Let's just call it Demo Installer. I hit Create. And the first thing it's going to ask you about is the version of Windows to install on. Now, if you watch my video on UWP, then you'll be familiar with this dialog. It's very similar to what we have in UWP. And what it does, it asks two different versions. First, it asks for what's your target version. What's the version that you're hoping will be on every machine at least, and that you're going to make sure that all your applications point to, as far as being able to, this is the maximum they can do, is the target. The minimum version is you don't allow it to be installed on anything before this minimum version. Now, it does limit your platform, but it does allow you to have more features. For example, if I chose the minimum version here of the anniversary update, one of the things that would not be available to me is the ability to update my application. So there's newer things in here that allow for updates, even with side-loaded applications. So we'll see that I'm going to choose to leave it just like it is, with 1903 being the target and 1809 being the minimum version. That's pretty restrictive, but for my audience, it's fine. For your audience, it may be different. Remember, just because Microsoft doesn't support something doesn't mean it's not out there. So the support for Windows 7 is gone, and even some of the older versions of Windows 10 are no longer supported. That doesn't mean they're not being used. All right, so just know that. You have to know your audience. Hit OK, and this will create the project for us. So it opens up a nice little page with some helpful links. But let's close that out. We don't need those. It's kind of like instructions, right? You don't read them. So let's look at what the demo installer has. So it has a manifest file. We'll open that in just a minute. It has an images folder with some images in there. Let's just open one up. This is the store logo. And it's kind of like their default, just a green field with a white X on it. So we're going to replace that in a little bit. And we have its applications here. This is where you say, what application are we deploying? So I'm going to right click on here and say add reference, just like I would if I was referencing a DLL file. Only instead of referencing a DLL file or a class library, instead I'm referencing my user interface project. So if your user interface project, this is ours right here, if that had a reference to a class library project, you don't have to select both. You just select a user interface project. Because when that gets built, it will bring in the class library DLLs if it needs them. So make sure this is the class or the user interface. Hit OK. And so now if we expand this out, you can see that WPF demo app has been included in our demo installer. The next step is actually, before we start modifying this package.appx manifest, I want to build an icon. So I've got the SyncFusion Metro Studio 5 open here. This is free from SyncFusion. You can get it just by giving them your email address, and they'll send you an email and register you to have this for free. And it's an icon studio. We're going to create just a dummy icon, something to just have. Okay, so let's choose something in the, let's go to the people category. And I kind of like this running athlete here. So let's hit the edit button here. And let's make the background transparent. All right. And we need a different color than this. Let's make it, how about that? Or do we want something like this? Let's go with the blue. I like blue. All right, so I used an eyedropper and just actually put it over my Visual Studio and found a color light. You can also go with green if you mouse up here, or you can give it an actual color. But I think blue is good. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my file is big enough. It's 512 by 512. Let's make that even bigger. So let's go with 2048 by 2048. And the padding here, I don't want much padding at all. In fact, I'm going to go with a pretty small pad of only 30 pixels or so. 32 is fine. All right. So there's my icons. It's really big now, but they scale nicely. I'm going to hit export. And let's go to my installer demo. And here, athlete.png is fine. So with that, I have now exported my icon. I have that in a file. I'll copy the path of that. And I can go to package.appxmanifest, double click it. And we'll use that icon in just a minute. But first, let's give this a display name. So this is the information that will be displayed for our application. This is our Timco demo app is the display name. And this is a simple Timco Timco application demonstration. Demonstration application, how about that? All right, something like that. Now, some of this stuff is going to be mostly for UWP. So, for example, the supported orientations, we don't have to worry about that. All right, you can leave it alone. Now, if you really wanted to, you could say certain ones are not supported. This is more for a full screen application, though, like a UWP application. That's all I'm going to do in this main page, though. Visual Assets is the next tab over, next section over. And this is where I'm going to create all of my icons. In fact, notice small tile, medium tile, wide tile, large tile, app icon, splash screen, badge logo, and package logo. If you scroll down, there's multiple different sizes for all of these. And that can get overwhelming because there's just so many you have to create. And if you're going to create an application and you really want to do it right, then you probably have to create that whole set of icons. Now, typically what I do, because I'm not a designer, is I will outsource that. I will go to a logo creation site or to maybe even Fiverr.com, and I will say, hey, I need this type of icon. Here's what I'm thinking. And then here's all the different resolutions I need. And then based upon that, I could put that in all these different spots. Notice 284 by 284, 142 by 142, 71 by 71, and so on, all the way down the list. Now, wide tiles, they're a little different. So it can't be just a copy and paste. Now, there is this really nice shortcut for starting your application out. So if you're just starting out, or it's a demo application, or really it's just a small enough application, it's not that big a deal. What you can do is, notice source here. If I click what should be an ellipsis, but only has 2 dots right now for some reason. Ellipsis has 3. So I'm going to paste in that path, and there's my ping file, my PNG. And notice it has this, it's 1024 by 1024. Evidently didn't go any larger than that. But that's okay. So now I can say the destination is the images folder. Notice that images folder right there. The assets, here's what I want to create. I could do everything. For some reason, they don't check the badge logo. I'm going to check it. So we're going to do everything. Scales, every scale. And how are we going to scale this? Do you want sharper edges or smoother edges? It's up to you. All right. Apply recommended padding. Cool. And apply color conversion for Windows light theme. Sure. All right. With all that being done, I hit generate. And it's going to say the following files be overwritten. That can't be undone. That's okay because those files are those temporary placeholder files. I hit OK. And it's going to create a whole bunch of files for me. There you go. Notice all the files now that I have. There's all different sets. If you scroll down here, notice you can see, it's a little hard to see sometimes because that black or gray and white checkered background, which means transparent. But there's my little running person in all these different resolutions. All right, and it didn't stretch it weird for these longer ones. All right, so it just made it's small, but it's still visible. It's not stretched out weird. You can still see what it is. All right, so that I've now created all my different icon sizes natively, and now that it will work properly with all those different resolutions. For display name, I want to call this, what do we call it on the application side? We call it IAmTimCorey Demo App. Lock screen notification. We want badge and tile text, sorry. So it did yell at me about that, which is cool. So IAmTimCorey Demo App for display name. So visual assets, short name. IAmTimCorey Demo App is still short enough, it's fine. I do want to show the name on the medium tile, the wide tile, and the large tile. These are for when you take your tile, your icon, and you put it into a start menu. So you have that different tile sizes you can do. Well, with that, do you want to show the display name on the short or the medium tile, the wide tile, and the large tile? Yes, yes, and yes. You don't have to, though. All right, I'm going to leave everything else the same. Capabilities, I'm not going to touch. This is more for UWP. UWP lives in that sandbox where you only have access to what you ask for. So if you don't check the Bluetooth, then you don't get access to Bluetooth. With Winforms and WPF, it's a little different. They operate with basically full access to the computer. And so because of that, we're going to see in the installer, it's going to say, hey, they have full access. But we don't have to specifically check these boxes in order to get that full access. Declarations, same thing. We don't have to declare anything here, so we're going to leave that alone. Content URI, this is for notifications. Again, we're not going to do anything there. So now we're at packaging. So packaging, we have a package name, which the name is going to be a GUID. That's good. We want it to be unique. The package display name, let's give that a different name. We'll give it the IAmTimCorey Demo App as the package display name. And we have the version information, major, minor, and build. That's cool. And we really need a certificate. So when you install an application using MSIX, you have to have a code signing certificate used to sign that code. And what this does is it says, I created this code. So if you trust me, then you can trust this code. And the reason for that is, let's say that someone else created the IAmTimCorey Demo App, but they're trying to pretend they were me. Well, they can't sign it using my certificate because my certificate is locked down just to me. So only I have access to that certificate to sign my packages. So someone else couldn't sign it as me, therefore would say, hey, I don't trust that package because it's not from a trusted source. You have to trust the certificate source in order to trust the data coming from it or the application coming from it. This is similar to the concept of SSL on the web, where you have to have an SSL certificate on your web server in order to use SSL, and you have to have it from a trusted certificate authority who verifies who you are. And so I can't say I'm Microsoft because I'm not. And so I can't get a certificate that says Microsoft because I'm not Microsoft. I'm Tim Corey. So therefore, I can get a certificate that says I am Tim Corey, and that's fine. And then you can know, okay, this comes from IAmTimCorey, and I trust IAmTimCorey, therefore I trust that the content has not been modified. But if my certificate was used that said IAmTimCorey, but I'm saying, hey, I'm from Microsoft, you would know that's not right. Okay? It's a similar concept we have here, where we're saying, I trust that when it says, when a package comes from Tim Corey, I trust that package. All right? That's what we're kind of doing here. So we've got to create a certificate, which certificates aren't free. You can make free certificates, but they won't be trusted. And so we're going to see how to use a developer certificate and trust it, which you can do. It's a manual process, but you can do it, which is good for internal work where it's just, inside your company, that's fine. Or where it's, small installations. But you're talking about selling a product, then you're going to want to use a code signing certificate from a reputable company like, say, Komodo, where you have to pay a certain amount a year. And it will probably be around $100 plus per year that you'll pay for a code signing certificate. Now, if that frightens you away, here's the thing. If you're going to be selling an application, there are some upfront fees to be thinking about. You're going to have to do that. Now, if you're going to give an application away, or again, you're doing internally to your company where you can control which certificates you trust, then a developer certificate like this is just fine. Because the only downside of creating your own certificate, and in this developer mode here, is the fact that it's not trusted anywhere. And so in order for someone else to trust this certificate, they have to physically say, you get the certificate and say, I trust that this certificate is valid. I trust the sender of the certificate. So that's the big downside of these dev certificates. So publisher, display name, IAmTimCorey. Choose a certificate. Well, I don't have one. So I'm going to create one. Now I could select from the store. So if you go into the Microsoft Store, they can generate one for you from a store, and then they'll trust it. And you can do a dev certificate when you're in dev, and then the store certificate when you're actually deploying to the store. But we're not deploying to the store in this video. That's a whole nother topic. All right, there's some other hoops to go through there, including setting up your store account. And I'll point a little bit to that and give you a link in the description for getting that store account. But this is just about creating MSIX installers for desktop applications, not even UWP. The process is the same for UWP, but I'm not going to demo it. All right, so let's create a dev certificate. So create, and the publisher's common name, I'm going to use IAmTimCorey, is fine. And then a password. Now, this password is really important. First of all, do not lose it, because you can't create new certificates if you don't have this password. So this PFX file is going to be your private key. This is something you do not give to anybody, because if they have this PFX, then they can create certificates and impersonate me. So I don't give this to anybody. This is something I secure very well. So I create a super secret password, like so. And if you're wondering, yes, this is my standard super secret password for all demos. All right, so if you want to guess it, go ahead, that's fine. But it's PWD, capital P, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a dot at the end. So if you want to mess around with that certificate, you can. Go for it. Okay? Because again, you have to trust this certificate. So I'm going to now can view a certificate. So there's a certificate. Notice it says, it may be hard to see, but it says that this certificate is not trusted. We're going to trust it in just a minute, but we're creating it first. So it expires on February 15th of 2021. All right, we're going to hit OK. Now we have a certificate for this application. And if we minimize this, we also see here we have that PFX file that's now part of our package. And that's all we have to do to configure our AppX manifest file. So it's a pretty step-by-step process, which I really like. I really appreciate that. Now, if you were to try to create your executable or your MSIX file right now, it won't work. So let's do a rebuild first, make sure we restore all our files, and it rebuilds successfully. So you think, okay, great, we're good to go. And so you right-click on your project, the demo installer, and you say publish, and you have three options here. Create app packages is one of them, or associate app with the store. That's if you're going to associate one time, you're going to associate your project, your installer, with the store. You could do that. But in our case, we're just going to create an app package, which will be a standalone installer that has no connection to the store. It's just for us to install manually or give to people to install. We don't have to be installing it through the store. But again, we're going to have a problem here. I'm going to show you in just a minute. I do want to demonstrate this problem because you're going to see it probably. So let's walk through this menu. I'll walk through the actual settings so that you can see what this process is, even though I know it's going to fail. All right. So first of all, how are you going to distribute your application? Through the Microsoft Store or side loading? Side loading is when you install your application without using the store. This is what we're going to do. That way I can give you a file and you can install it without having to go through the store and making sure that my application's on the store. This is very convenient for internal applications, for testing applications, for small little applications using in a few different places. It's not as convenient for selling applications or things like that. You really want to use a store for that in most cases. So I'm going to use side loading, which is on by default starting, I believe, in November of 2019's version of Windows 10. And then you have to, if you want, you can check this box, enable automatic updates. Yes, I want automatic updates. That's just awesome. It's simple to use and it's great. So I already use that. I hit next. Do you want to use a certificate? Why, yes, we do. If you don't use a certificate, you will have to sign the app package before you use it. And it would be externally. So that's an additional headache you don't want to do. Therefore, we're going to sign this as part of this process. I've already created the certificate. Therefore, we don't need to do anything else here. Now, the timestamp server URL here, what this would be for, and we're not going to demonstrate this here, but if you had a timestamp server URL it could point to, then what would happen is it would trust your installer even if the certificate was expired. So if the certificate was valid when this installer was created, then it would trust the installer. If you don't have a timestamp server URL, then even though nothing has changed except you've passed the expiration date, your installer will no longer work once you hit that expiration date. So just note that's the difference there. You can change the algorithm it uses for encryption. So you can go up to SHA-512. By default, it's SHA-256. I think that's fine for your application. Let's hit next. Now, this is where we have the output location. That's fine. We're going to leave it alone. That's basically it's inside of our folder where our project is. Our version number, we have our major or minor, and then automatically increment our build version. Generate app bundle. What this does is it makes sure that it creates a bundle that you can get the right value for you in one file. So if you're installing on a 32-bit machine, then it would give you the 32-bit installer. If you're installing a 64-bit machine, it would give you a 64-bit installer, and it knows which one to give you. So that I just say yes to always create an app bundle instead of creating separate files. Now, down here, which packages do you want to create? And this is where you're going to get into the first problem, is which architectures do you want to support? Neutral is on by default. We're going to see how that's going to cause a problem. And then include public symbols file, which is a PDB file for crash analysis of the app. Those symbol files are very helpful for debugging your application. So unless you really don't want them to go out, and again, they're the public symbol files, I would say include them. All right. If you're really, really concerned about not giving people any information possible, you can uncheck that box, but just know that you're making your life a lot harder and you're really not protecting your state secrets. Okay. So we're going to leave this box right here alone for right now. We're going to say neutral, allow it to be default, and hit next. And then the installer location. I'm going to, I think I still have my clipboard. Nope, I don't. I'll copy and paste it again. My URL to where I have my PNG file, and that's where the installer will be. Okay, so this could be a web location where I could point it in the web, or it can be a desktop location like a URL, or I'm sorry, a file path, or it could be a UNC path where it's a network location. It's up to you how you want to do this, but just note that if you have multiple people installing from different locations, you want that to be a centrally located folder or place so that everything can point back to that, because this is where applications will figure out if they need to be updated, and if they do, pull that update down. Now, when do you want to check for updates? Every time the application runs, or every X number of days, hours, or weeks. So in theory, you could check every hour. That feels like overkill. It's up to you, but I would just say every time the application runs, so when it starts up, it's going to check to see if there's a new update. What that means is that it's not going to check until the application starts. So if the application starts and then a new version comes out, the person won't get that new version yet. When they close the application and start it back up, then the application will still be in the old version, but it will figure out, okay, the next time I start, I need that update. And so it will wait, and then the next time you start it, you'll get that update. Now, if you don't want that, if you'd say, you know what, I would rather have it check every hour in the background, and then even if I am working on an older version and a new version comes out, within an hour, if I still am working on the application, my application will figure out, oh, next time I start, I'll get a new version. That can save you one iteration in certain circumstances. I'm going to leave it at every time the application runs. This down here could become some network bandwidth that might be difficult for you if, let's say, you have 10,000 applications all checking every hour. That might be significant versus just when they start the application up. So just know that it all depends on your scenario. I'm going to check the first one though. Okay. Now, again, it's going to fail. I'll show you why. We hit create. So it's going to start building our package. Notice down here is a little icon that's building, and it gives me this error message. And the error message is one that I didn't find a whole lot of good answers online for, so I want to show it to you. And it says there's a mismatch between the processor architecture of the product being built, MSIL, and the processor architecture of the reference, which is x86. This mismatch may cause runtime failures. May cause, and yeah, it's an error. So what do you have to do? Well, the issue here is our build. It's saying any CPU, and that's not ideal. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Build menu and go to Configuration Manager. This is where we configure how things are built. So I'm going to go to Release. I'm going to say for release, I'm going to choose the x64 platform. And notice down here we have the demo installer. It's a little small. Let's see if we can zoom in. I can't really zoom in there, sorry. It says demo installer here, and it says the platform is x64. That's our installer. But the WPF demo app says any CPU. If we do a drop down here, x64 is not an option. So I hit new instead. And I can choose x64 and copy the settings from any CPU. That's fine. Just don't check this box that says create new solution platforms. Hit OK. And now I've matched up and said whenever the active solution is 64-bit, make sure that both the installer and the WPF app are using the 64-bit platform. All right, and that's in release mode. Now I'm going to choose the x86 solution platform. Notice again, we have x86 for our demo installer and any CPU for our WPF application. Let's create a new x86. Do not check the box. Make sure we copy from any CPU. Hit OK. And now you've got the matching versions here. I hit close. Now I go back to my installer. I say publish, create app packages. And the settings are still here, so I hit next, and then down here, I'm not going to say neutral. I'm going to say x86 and x64. These are the two platforms that I will support. And with that support, I choose release for x86 and release for x64. So now I know that everything matches up. So if we're building a 32-bit, which x86 is 32-bit, if we're building a 32-bit installer, it's going to use a 32-bit MSIX file and a 32-bit WPF application. And if we're using the 64-bit, then it's going to create a 64-bit installer that installs a 64-bit WPF application. Basically just matching those together. That's all it's really doing. Now I hit next. Notice before I do, notice the version 1.0. These are the ones that I change, major and minor versions. But the build number, I don't have to change. It changes automatically. Now it says 1.0.1, even though 1.0.0 failed. That build changed. So I hit next, and I hit create, and it's going to start creating for me my package. Now this might take a little bit. This packaging process is not always that quick. And if you don't have Visual Studio selected, what's going to happen is it's going to actually not pull up any dialog. It's just going to flash at you. And when you click back on Visual Studio, then it will bring the dialog box up that you need to see. So just note that if you click off and do something else while you're waiting, click back every once in a while and just make sure that box doesn't pop up. Okay, so again, this takes a little bit. It's already done step 1, which is the build, and now it is publishing everything. Notice the lower left-hand corner. I can feel like nothing's happening, but lower left-hand corner and then lower right-hand side, there's indicators saying, hey, I'm still working. All right, when it's done, you get this box right here where it's popped up and says, okay, we've finished creating the package. And it gives you an overview of what happened. First of all, here's the location where that package currently is. Here's the installer location. That's where it's going to. The version is 1.0.1.0. The required operating system, there's that version. Architecture is a 32-bit or 64-bit. It is bundled and is published by IAmTimCorey. Now, it says to copy the created package from the output location, that's this long path right here, to the installer location, that's this path we've selected. Select copy and close. This is a shortcut. So notice over here, there's that installer location, that D demos installer demo. Nothing here except for the ping file. But if I say copy and close, and I go back over here, now I have a few things. I have a index.html file, which is interesting. Then I have my app installer extension. And then I have this folder called demo installer with test at the end. And there is my certificate and my MSIX bundle. All right, so there are my files that I need. Let's first look at this index.html file. Isn't this page cool? So this is on my local system. So d demos installer demo.index or /index.html. But it's got my logo here. That's kind of cool. Timco demo app, the version number, the description of it. This looks like an installer page. It looks like a Windows Store page or a Microsoft Store page. So we can get the app. And it says, hey, do you want to open the app installer? Sure, let's open the app installer. When you do, this is what pops up. All right, now I'm going to show you. Let's close this out for a minute. I'm going to close this out. If I were to double click on this demo installer.app installer, it does the exact same thing. If I go to the index.html page and say install. So just note that's what it's doing. Now this is the generic installer that's going to install the latest version that you have. Currently you only have one version, but it's going to install the latest version. Now note here that it does say untrusted app, and that's not good. So it's not a verified publisher. So I'm going to say, you know what? I don't care. I know that I trust him. I'm not going to worry about it. Let's go ahead and install this thing anyways. I keep reading. It says uses all system resources as an access to your internet connection as well. That's basically saying this is an app that has full access to everything. And that's because it's a WPF application, not a UWP application where you can dial in those permissions. All right, so by installing, you agree this app will automatically check for and install updates. Okay, cool. And launch when ready. Excellent. Install this thing. And it says, no. Either you need a new certificate installed for this package, or you need a new app package with trusted certificates. All right. So a certificate chain processed but terminated in a root certificate which was not trusted. All right. So there's the error message for us. You can't install an untrusted application. So how do I trust this thing? Well, if we look inside this folder, you'll see there's two things here. One, an MSIX bundle. So this bundle has our MSIX files in it. One for x86, one for x64. But there's also a certificate file. This is what's called the public certificate. It is safe to give out. Unlike the PFX file over here in our project, which is not safe to give out. That's the private certificate. The public certificate just says, here is what it will look like to see this certificate. If I double click here and open it up, it's going to say issued to Tim Corey, issued by Tim Corey. It's valid from today through next year. Here's the details about it, including the serial number, the signature, and all the rest. All right. And there's the path. So this is my certificate that I created locally. It's a demo certificate that isn't trusted by anyone because no one trustworthy gave it to me. I cannot be considered trustworthy of myself. All right. Now I can trust myself, and we'll do that in just a minute. But this is where normally it would come from Komodo or somewhere similar where they have provided for you the authentication of who you are. So I've given them information to verify I am Tim Corey, and they said, okay, now here's a certificate you can use to sign things so that you can say I am Tim Corey. We've verified who you are. And most computers trust certificates from certain authorities, including Komodo, so therefore that'd already be a trust relationship. So in our case, we don't have that trust relationship. So we need to install one. So this certificate file, which again is public, it's allowed to go with your installer, you would give this to someone, they would right click and say install certificate. They get this dialog box. Welcome to the installation wizard. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit there. There's better. So welcome to the certificate import wizard. And it's going to ask you, where do you want this certificate to go? Current user or local machine. Here's the difference. The current user will only be for you. And if someone else logs on your machine, it will not be trusted. The local machine does take administrative rights to install to, but now anybody that uses this machine will trust this certificate. So choose local machine, and notice the little shield icon come up here, and that's going to be what's called a UAC prompt, which means the screen will go gray and it will ask you yes or no, do you want to allow this? So I'm going to hit next. I'll go gray in just a minute, and I'm going to say yes, I want to allow that. And now from here, what you have is going to ask you, where do you want to install this certificate? Do you want to automatically select the certificate store based upon the type of certificate? The answer is no. It'd be so nice if that was yes, but in this case, we want it to be a root certificate. So place all certificates in the following store. Hit browse, and we have a longer list of certificate places we could install them. In this case, we want the trusted root certification authorities. What this says is these are the authorities that I trust to give out certificates. In this case, I want to trust myself. I want to say that I trust me to give out good certificates. Now, no one else by default will trust me until they also do this, but for a demo purpose, this is just fine. So I'm going to hit OK, and I hit Next, and that's it. I hit Finish. And so now we get this dialog box, the import was successful. And if I go back to my installer, I double click on it, now it says Trusted App. And the reason why is because my certificate is now a root certificate and is trusted by this computer. Only this computer, but by this computer. So if you were to give out this installer to somebody, you'd also have to give them that certificate file and walk them through the steps of installing that as a trusted root certificate authority. That seems complicated, and yeah, it kind of is. This is why by default we use real certificate authorities, ones that are already trusted. But if you're in a corporate environment, you can trust your own certificates. You can put that right in a policy and pass it down to every machine in the company that says, trust this certificate, and be fine. Or if you're doing it for a small scale installation, it's no big deal for a couple people to do this, or for your beta testers or something like that, they can walk through this process fairly easily. So now that it's installed, the certificate that is, let's install the application. So I'm going to download and install the application, and now it's going to launch the application. There we go. This is our first version. Cool. So we have the application installed. In fact, it will be in my start menu. Now, I can't show you my start menu. It's off my screen, but it is there. But let's make a change. Let's go back over here. I'm going to change the background to be, let's go with green. And let's change the, this is our second version. And let's change the foreground to be white. So we have white lettering. All right. That's our second version of our application. Major changes, major improvements. So now what do you do to create a new version? Well, all you do is right click, publish, create an app package. And since you've already done this once, you can just hit next, next. Notice the new version is 2 and it's already checked. Everything's checked. So we're good to go. Hit next, and this will publish our new version. So we're going to watch closely on this folder once we, actually gotta wait because it won't pop up if I had that folder highlighted. But once this is done, it's going to pop up that same dialog box and say, hey, do you want to copy this over to that location? And we're going to say yes. It's not going to overwrite anything. It'll say, okay, you already have the index.html file. You already have your app installer. Therefore, you just need to put that new folder there, and it will point to those new locations. So it will know. It may tweak the index and the app installer. I'm not positive. I'll look at that in just a minute and see the file changes. But it's really, you can use those same things, and it's going to point to those new locations, and it will just install the new version. All right. So I hit copy and close. And with that, now we have, it did change these two files. So it does point to the new location by modifying the file a little bit. But now we have the version 1.0.2. But let's run. I'm going to open my start menu up and run my demo application. This is our first version. Well, that's not great, right? Because we want the second version. Well, don't forget, it checks for a new version when we start the application. It found there's a new version. If I hit close and I open it again, it takes a little bit longer to open the next time. And now the next time we have an updated application. Very cool. Now we have an updater that will update our applications as we use them. We can close that out. And now I'm going to right click and uninstall that installed application. So I've uninstalled my application, which, by the way, the installers for MSIX, they try and keep everything together so that when you uninstall, everything gets uninstalled. Everything. That means that it's a clean uninstall. You're not leaving junk behind like MSIX files sometimes did. EXE files did a little bit more for setup.exe. And we just got used to this idea of my computer continually has junk from when I uninstalled. Not so much with MSIX files. I won't say never leave things behind, but it takes some work to leave stuff behind. All right, so I've uninstalled it. Now I'm going to run this installer again. Notice it says version 1.0.2. I will install it, and I just want to demonstrate to you that yes, when you install it, you get the latest version. So even though it's an older version here, you get the latest version, not the older version. Now I'm going to uninstall that version again, just to be sure that it's off my computer. And now, what if you're done working on this application? You say, okay, I've uninstalled it, but I still have that dev certificate that isn't really trustworthy, but it kind of is trustworthy. What do I do with that? Well, if you are on Windows 10, and you should be to have this installer running, so I'm going to assume you are, hit the Windows key. If you hit the Windows key, it brings up the Start menu, but it also allows you to start typing to search for something. And search for certificate, and one of the options is Manage Computer Certificates. And it's going to be a UAC prompt. It's going to make the screen go dark. And then you get this right here. This is your certificate authority list. So this is all the certificates on your computer that you trust. Notice there's a whole bunch of different folders. For the most part, don't mess around in here. These certificates are ones that you should trust usually. But we added a new one in the Trusted Root Certification Authority. So I'm going to open up that certificate list. There's a whole list in here. But if you sort by, let's say issued by, or no one's expiration date. So issued by, if you scroll down here, TimCorey. So TimCorey issued a certificate to TimCorey. Therefore, I can select that, and I now know this is the correct one. Also know the expiration date matches what I expect it to be. Therefore, I know that this is the one that I created. Don't delete ones that you didn't create. Now, this is a code signing certificate, so I can right click on this and I can say delete. All right, and if I do this, it goes away and there's no restoration of this. Okay, so I hit yes. And now if I come back over to my installer and I try to install this thing, it says untrusted app. So I've removed that certificate from my computer. So that's how you'd remove it when you're done with your development process. You don't have to, but it really is a good practice to clean your certificates up of the ones you really aren't using. So that's how I recommend doing that. So that's really all there is to using MSIX for desktop applications like WPF or Winforms, the .NET Core versions. All right. Now, to give this to somebody, you could put this on a server somewhere and point to this index.html page and allow them to run that, install it, run the installer, and pull the right files. So you really just need to put this in a web server somewhere. It's probably the ideal location for you if you're not going to use the Microsoft Store. Now, what I haven't covered today, which is going to come up in future videos at some point, is publishing to the store. There's an option there. You saw when we right-click on it and say Publish, associate app with a store. When we go to publish our application, the first thing it asks us is, do you want to put it in a store? So, store publishing is a little complex. And it's more because not everything is documented well. But once you get the process down, you can put this in the Microsoft Store and actually sell your application. Now, I'm going to give you the source code. So I would recommend you not put this one in the store. I understand the appeal. This is an amazing application, but probably won't sell for very much, especially since everybody has access to this source code. But if you find the application that you build is useful for something, you could put in a store either for free or for a fee. All right. Now that's one thing that we'll cover in the future, but that you could go from here with is the next step. Another thing is using a real certificate store. So if you say, you know what, I don't want to mess around with these dev certificates anymore, I want this to have a real certificate, you could do that. I recommend going to Comodo, C-O-M-O-D-O. They have a good reputation and they are not too expensive for code signing certificates, but I do believe it's over $100 now for a code signing certificate per year. Now you can use that certificate for more than one app, so you could use it for multiple, but again, it's going to cost you something every year. So it's up to you if that investment is worth it at this point. I recommend not doing that until there is a reason where that investment is worth it. Don't buy stuff first and then build your application. Build your application first and then buy the stuff to support it, like a website or code signing certificates and so on. Now, if you go through the store, you'll work through the store certificate process, and that can be a little easier. Getting an account for the Microsoft Store is not free either, but they have made changes to it. Unlike with the Apple iOS applications where you pay per year for a developer license, with the Microsoft Store for individuals, I believe it's $19 to get an account, and then it's free from then on. There's no more recurring fees. So it's just $19 to get in the door, just to say, yes, I'm serious, essentially. Now, the one other thing, so that's publishing to the store, creating certificates. Those are two things we haven't covered that I want to cover in a future video. But the third thing that is going to come out at some point is automating all this. So you've seen me right-click and publish and create the app package. That's okay, but we really want to have this be an automated process where we use Azure DevOps or something similar to create automatically our packages for us and automatically push to the store. So that is something that I would recommend once you have your application designed. Again, it's not a first step thing. The first step is getting your code running. Then get it packaged up, then get it in the store, and then after that, then work on automating the process so that it's repeatable, it's testable, and that it's not something that you have to go through a checklist in order to get done. Okay? So those are the future things I think that you should, next steps from this video. Okay? But for now, that's all we're going to cover on MSIX. You can use this to create installers for your WinForm application, winform.net, .core, your WPF .core projects, and even your UWP projects if you're doing those. All right? So with that, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will try to answer as best I can, and maybe somebody else will have some answers as well. All right? Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.